Brought to you by WikiVD Documentaries. T2 Trainspotting. T2 Trainspotting is a 2017 British comedy drama film, set in and around Edinburgh, Scotland. The film is directed by Danny Boyle and written by John Hodge, based on characters created by Irvine Welsh in his novel Trainspotting and its follow-up Porno. T2 was released in the United Kingdom on 27 January 2017 and worldwide throughout February and March 2017. A sequel to Boyle's 1996 film Trainspotting, T2 stars the original ensemble cast, including Ewan McGregor, Ewen Bremner, Jonny Lee Miller, Robert Carlyle, and Kelly Macdonald. T2 is deliberately self-referential, with film clips, music and echoes from the first film. The screenplay is based on Porno, with characters and elements lifted from the novel Trainspotting. Plot. It has been 20 years since Mark Boy Renton stole from his friends the money they had made in a drug deal and fled the country. He has apparently made a decent, but unfulfilling life for himself in Amsterdam, and returns to Edinburgh to make contact with those in his former life. Daniel "Spud" Murphy continues to struggle with his heroin addiction, which has caused him to lose his construction job and estranged him from Gail Houston and their son Fergus. Simon "Sick Boy" Williamson, now a cocaine addict, runs the Port Sunshine pub he inherited from his aunt and, with his Bulgarian girlfriend Veronica, attempts to blackmail men by luring them into sex videos. Francis Franco Begbie is serving a 25-year prison sentence and is denied parole due to his violent temper. Mark stops by his childhood home, where his father tells him of his mother's death while he was away. He visits Spud at his flat, narrowly preventing him from committing suicide. Spud initially resents the intervention, but Mark offers to help him out of his addiction. Mark visits Simon at the pub intending to apologize and pay back Simon's share of the money he stole. They fight, but ultimately make peace. Begbie escapes from prison, then reunites with his wife, and meets his university-bound son, whom he wants to instead join him in burgling houses. Begbie visits Simon, and learns that Mark has returned. Simon pretends to collaborate with him in getting revenge upon Mark, but keeps both of them unaware of his contact with the other. Mark, Simon, and Veronica become partners in various crimes, using the money from their deeds to begin renovating the Port Sunshine into a brothel. They fraudulently apply for an EU business development loan and are given £100,000. But friction develops as Simon slips ever deeper into his cocaine habit, and Veronica begins an affair with Mark. One of Simon's blackmail targets reports him to the police, and Mark seeks legal advice from his former girlfriend Diane Coulston, now a solicitor. A menacing encounter with the owner of a rival brothel intimidates Mark and Simon into ending their plans. Begbie and Mark accidentally meet in the toilets of a nightclub, resulting in a chase that ends with Mark barely escaping from Begbie. Begbie visits Spud for help finding Mark, and discovers that Veronica has encouraged him to write his memoirs. From the drafted pages spread throughout Spud's apartment, Begbie learns for the first time that Renton had left Spud his £4,000 share of the £16,000 drug deal earnings. When Veronica stops by, Begbie takes her phone, which he uses to trick Mark and Simon into meeting him at Simon's pub. Veronica tries to convince Spud to go away with her, promising him half of the money they received from the EU loan and their other schemes. But he refuses, saying he would only spend it on drugs. but he helps her by forging Mark and Simon's signatures to move the money to her bank account. Simon and Mark meet at the pub, and Spud arrives to warn them of Begbie's trap. Begbie arrives and knocks Simon unconscious. He traps Mark upstairs, who falls and gets caught in loose cables from the renovations, strangling him. Simon revives and works to save Mark, and as Begbie is about to shoot them both with his shotgun, Spud knocks him out with a toilet bowl. In the epilogue, Begbie has been left by his former friends in the boot of a car parked at the prison it escaped from. Veronica returns to Bulgaria with the money she took from Mark and Simon, where she reunites with her son. Spud begins a new career as a writer and begins mending his relationship with Gail and Fergus. Gail reads his writings and suggests a name for the book, never spoken, but implying it will be Trainspotting. Mark reconciles with Simon, and moves back into his father's home, embracing his father before going into his bedroom and playing "Lust for Life" on his record player. Production. In January 2009, Danny Boyle declared his wish to make a sequel to his 1996 film Trainspotting, which would take place 9 years after the original film, based on Irvine Welsh's sequel, Porno. He was reportedly waiting until the original actors themselves aged visibly enough to portray the same characters, ravaged by time. Boyle joked that the natural vanity of actors would make it a long wait. Ewan McGregor stated in an interview that he would return for a sequel, saying, "I'm totally up for it. I'd be so chuffed to be back on set with everybody, and I think it would be an extraordinary experience." In March 2013, Boyle said he wanted to make a sequel that would be loosely based on Porno, which he had described as not a great book in the way that Trainspotting, the original novel, is genuinely a masterpiece. Boyle said that if the sequel were to happen, it would be for a 2016 release. On the 6th of May 2014, during a BBC radio interview with Richard Bacon, Welsh confirmed that he had spent a week with Boyle, Andrew Macdonald and the creative team behind Trainspotting to discuss the sequel. Welsh stated that the meeting was in order to explore the story and script ideas. "We're not interested in doing something that will trash the legacy of Trainspotting. We want to do something that's very fresh and contemporary." Welsh did not, however, confirm any kind of timeline for the film. Unlike Boyle's comments about wanting the film to come out in 2016. In a newspaper interview with The Scotsman on the 17th of November 2014, Welsh revealed that McGregor and Boyle had resolved their differences and had held meetings about the film, saying, "I know Danny and Ewan are back in touch with each other again. There are others in the cast who've had a rocky road but now also reconciled. With the Trainspotting sequel, the attention is going to be even more intense this time round. Because the first was such a great movie, and Annie's such a colossus now. We're all protective of the Trainspotting legacy, and we want to make a film that adds to that legacy and doesn't take away from it." On the 7th of September 2015, at the Telluride Film Festival, Boyle stated his next film would be a sequel, tentatively titled Trainspotting 2. In a the 27th of September 2015 interview with ComingSoon.net, Boyle revealed that a script for the sequel had been written, and that filming would reportedly take place between May and June 2016, in the hopes of releasing the film within that same year, to commemorate Trainspotting's 20th anniversary. While promoting Steve Jobs in November 2015, Boyle reiterated the hopes of beginning principal photography for the sequel in May and June 2016, and said that pre-production had begun in Edinburgh. Boyle also clarified that John Hodge wrote an original screenplay for the sequel, and that the film would not be a strict adaptation of Porno. An earlier script was reportedly written about 10 years prior, but was scrapped so that the original cast would agree to return for a film sequel. The working title for the sequel was T2. In a November 2015 phone interview with NME, Robert Carlyle confirmed he would be returning for the sequel to play Begbie. According to Carlyle, he and other members of the Trainspotting cast had already read John Hodge's script, and it would take place 20 years after the original plot. Expecting to start filming in the middle of 2016, Carlyle praised Hodge's screenplay and hinted that T2 is going to be quite emotional for people, because the film sort of tells you to think about yourself. You are going to be thinking, fuck, what have I done with my life? In early December 2015, it was announced that Sony's TriStar Pictures had acquired worldwide rights to the film and that the original lead cast would be returning. Filming. Principal photography on the film began on 10 March 2016, in Edinburgh, Scotland, according to director Boyle. Filming was previously scheduled to take place in May 2016. Soundtrack. The official soundtrack was released on 27 January 2017. It features Blondie, The Clash, Wolf Alice, High Contrast, The Prodigy, Queen, Run DMC, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Underworld, The Rubber Bandits and Young Fathers. Release. T2 was released in the United Kingdom on 27 January 2017, followed by rolling worldwide releases from 10 February 2017. The film was given a limited release in the US on 17 March 2017, followed by a wider release on 31 March 2017 in a few other major cities. T2 also screened out of competition at the 67th Berlin International Film Festival. T2 Trainspotting has grossed $1.6 million in the United States and Canada, $21.1 million in the United Kingdom and $15.2 million in other territories, for a worldwide gross of $37.9 million, against a production budget of $18 million. Critical response. The film received positive reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 79% based on 188 reviews, with an average rating of 6.9. The site's consensus reads, T2 Trainspotting adds an intoxicating, emotionally resonant postscript to its classic predecessor, even without fully recapturing the original's fresh, subversive thrill. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 67 out of 100, based on 42 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVD Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.